Hello, and welcome to Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting on episode 10 of My Senpai is Annoying. If you'd like to watch along, then start watching now. Ooh, okay, I think I know where this plot's going. Sakurai may or may not have put on a little bit of weight, and she's now disquieted at the fact that she is tremendously fat and now unattractive. You know, obviously none of that's true, but she's going to probably go a little overboard in her attempt to correct the problem. I mean, if she was just sort of like going on a morning run that she wasn't prepared for, you know, it makes sense that she probably strained herself a little bit. Alright, so this is interesting, you know, obviously she can't tell Kazuma what the problem is, although if she told him, you know, he wouldn't care, not in a dismissive sort of way, but more like, you know, I don't think it would be a deal breaker for him. You know, this is a pretty good example of him being compassionate and caring about her, even if she doesn't necessarily want the extra attention. Oh dear. Oh no, she's not. She gonna make like a pregnancy joke here? It's like, oh, you're not pregnant, you're just fat? I thought you were pregnant. Whoops, sorry. Okay, well, it doesn't seem like she's gonna make that joke, I suppose. You know, she just wanted to feel up her coworker. Ah, man. I mean, at least for Kazuma, this whole thing's a transcendental experience, the lucky guy. Unfortunately, he's no longer in any fit state to help. Alright, now that's an interestingly inconspicuous title. And I know that seems like a sort of contradiction in terms, but after the whole summer vacation episode, it seems like everybody's just sort of settling into the routine of autumn. Now, I guess it's kind of interesting that this is sort of a routine problem for Sakurai, and that she's confiding in Igarashi, you know, whether or not she can actually relate to the issue. Although, seeing as how, the ramen store owner, he's having, I guess an eating contest, or rather he's hosting one, I feel like this will have rather deleterious effects on everybody's diet. I mean, that is rather dangerous, because that looks like a sort of food I would actually really enjoy eating. And the idea is, eat all this food, and if you do it before the other guy, you don't have to pay the bill. Takeda. He doesn't even recognize his own coworker. Granted, he may not actually interact with her all that much, but come on, you work in the same office. Granted, she seems to be... I don't know what the deal is here, if she can't actually speak the language or what, because, she does drop in a few foreign words here or there. I don't know what language it is precisely, but I'm wondering if this is a ploy here. I mean, this is supposed to be a race, but she's really, not making any kind of an effort. Yeah, that was strange, because she sort of, brought in the flyer and pointed to it as though she didn't know the right words to use, but she sort of proved she can speak after all. I'm wondering if this episode's going to be, I guess, functionally an anthology of, little short stories. That certainly seems like what it's going to be so far. I mean, now we have Yuta and Kazuma, and... I think there's some room for them to become friends, especially if Kazuma's going to feature in his life more and more as his sister's significant other. I mean, not that they're really truly official, I mean, that date at the aquarium was sort of the real deal, and yeah, Kazuma said some things, but they sort of just reverted to the status quo after that. So I guess the nice thing here is that he can actually offer some basketball pointers to Yuto, which is, I mean, good, because, he does want to play basketball, but all we really know about him so far is that he's just kind of not very good at it. And I guess when you get down to it, really the only way to improve is via practice and, hopefully with somebody who knows what they're doing. And fortunately, it seems like this is the case. Yeah, maybe Yuto needs a little bit more than just practice. Maybe a minor miracle would help. Especially seeing as how, Kazuma seems to have been battered by the experience. Although I do think it is a point in his favor that, despite seemingly being battered about the face pretty heavily, he's willing to help out the kid again. I guess it helps that, none of that was done on purpose. Okay, so now Takeda knows her name. Huh. I'm baffled if he's just oblivious or what the deal is here. Now, I guess what's sort of interesting here is that I'm wondering if this is something that would make Igarashi jealous. This is sort of her thing to do, eat lunch with Takeda and all that, but if somebody else is sort of intruding, I mean, it's no secret that she doesn't have a whole lot of self-confidence, so somebody even, marginally more feminine than her would be effectively an existential threat. Of course, Igarashi's overthinking things to some degree, but, it is fortunate that Takeda is such a caring guy, seeing as how, she was very clearly jealous about missing out, that he's like, well, you know what, we can go get the pork buns and all that. Yeah, there really doesn't seem to be a sort of through line at all in this episode. Everything's just sort of small and disconnected. It's not like I don't like it or anything. It is kind of interesting how, I guess it varies from what's been done before. Okay. No, you know what? They're not entirely disconnected. Sakurai did take the time to actually make lunch, and there is something very nice about that, having food made for you specifically from scratch. Okay, So that's kind of an interesting admission that, he had invited other people, but there was a scheduling conflict. It seemed to me that he was sort of like doing this out of the goodness of his heart, but, it seemed like maybe he was, I guess, trying to organize like a pickup game of basketball. I mean, I don't think there's any good way to sort of stack these teams so that it's fair. I mean, like, whichever team has Takeda, like, I think they basically win by virtue of him just being a giant. And, I don't imagine Igarashi has any sort of skill at basketball. Yeah, that's interesting that he didn't sort of let Sakurai know what was going on, and therefore, she thought this would have been some alone time, or quasi-alone time. Yeah, I really don't think this is all that fair of a team, but it's probably about as good as it's going to get. I mean, Kazuma has proven that he's pretty good at basketball. I'd imagine that Natsumi, by virtue of being generally athletic, could, hold her own to some degree, but Igarashi and Yuta are basically like two anchors around Natsumi's neck. I mean, I said that, but Igarashi might actually surprise us if she can dribble like that. It's not like dribbling's hard to do, but you have to have some degree of coordination. And she seemed to be doing it effortlessly. Man, they just sort of left Yuta lying on the ground like that. The poor guy. I feel like if nothing else, that should have been called as a foul. I mean, granted, he doesn't seem to be too badly injured, but, if somebody falls over and they're not getting up, I feel like maybe you should stop the play, just to make sure there's not, an actual injury going on here. Yeah, this is kind of something we could have all foreseen, that like, nobody's going to really be effective at guarding Takeda. I mean, there you go. If he can just sort of dunk like that, like, what else can all these short people do? I mean, this is assuming, of course, that Igarashi isn't going to sink like a sweet three-pointer or something right as the buzzer goes off. I mean, you never know. But I feel like, if anything, it'll probably be Yuto, just to, I guess just to express that Kazuma's really, sort of helped him out a little bit. That, he has maybe not natural skill, but he's sort of improved. Yeah, now I'm wondering if Kazuma just sort of like let him slip past. Ooh. I'd have to imagine that doesn't feel particularly good. Maybe you should have just gone for a layup instead of a dunk, especially being so short. You know what? Good on Takeda, actually sort of like acquiescing and crouching down a little bit. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to have made much difference. I don't think Igarashi's shot would have made it in had Takeda not intercepted the ball with his face. But, if she just kind of knocked him over like that, it had to have been a pretty powerful throw. I'm wondering if they're playing with like quasi-dodgeball rules here, where if you get hit with the ball, you have to sit out, because that seems to be what's going on. Now, I guess the question remains, who's going to be better here, Kazuma or Natsumi? And I feel like with his overall skill at the game, Kazuma would win. He's certainly making a good showing for himself. Yeah, I wonder, I was kind of wondering if Kazuma was just going easy on her before, busting out that whole, teleports behind you, nothing personal kid kind of deal. I mean, I guess at the very least there was like a little bit of chivalry at the core of his argument. I didn't want to bump into you indecently. And, fair enough, but like there's got to be some degree of contact in basketball. Although, maybe not that kind of contact. I'm glad Sakurai is keeping a sharp eye out for fouls like that. Yeah, I'd imagine with weapons like those in play, they're probably pretty evenly matched. Although, Sakurai seems to have arrived at the point that, this whole thing was to benefit Yuto, and he was kind of sitting out for a while. That is a good point, and I mean, Yuto's kind of right in that you can learn a lot just by watching, but I feel like, with basketball, it being a sport, practical experience is probably the best way to go about it. Alright. So, that's nice. Sakurai's a little upset that she hasn't gotten to spend any time with Kazuma. So, you can't just, leave. You actually have to spend some time together. Fortunately, Natsumi's sort of picking up on what Sakurai was putting down. Man, what would they do without such dedicated friends to help them out on occasion? And frankly, what would Igarashi do without such a dedicated coworker to literally carry her because she's too tired to walk? Oh dear. So, if just being carried around wasn't embarrassing enough, they're actually going to a public bath, which is, interesting. Stuff happens, and it's, well, I'm sure something interesting will happen. Even if it's only the tacit comparison between Natsumi and Igarashi, I'd imagine somebody's going to get some ideas about that dividing wall. Man, that was sort of mean, Natsumi saying, how much have you actually grown since middle school? And, unfortunately, the answer seems to be not much at all. That's gotta suck. Just, to sort of stop growing when you're, 13 or so. Like, I'm not exactly a Herculean colossus, but, you know, I was certainly a lot smaller at 13 than I am now. Well, I guess Taket is giving Yuto some sound advice on how to grow big and strong. You know, I figured there would be more, bath shenanigans, but, you know, given the general wholesome tone of this anime, it's probably for the best that we didn't get anything else. I mean, we did sort of hit on the expected notes, or I guess the things I sort of expected to happen. Ooh, you know what? I think that's grounds for Sakurai to just totally shun Kazuma. He doesn't put any ketchup on his hot dog. I'm pretty sure, that was declared to be heretical by, the Pope, you know? Like, if you don't put ketchup on your hot dog, you're going to hell. I'm pretty sure that was one of the 10 Commandments, too, actually. Thou shalt put ketchup on your hot dog. Oh, dear. You know, that's gotta be a real kick in the teeth, that all that advice about growing big and strong, you know, Igarashi's been following that and it hasn't done anything. That's gonna be a real bitter pill for her to swallow, although granted, you know, at her age, I can't imagine there's any possibility of her growing more. Because she's supposed to be like, what, early 20s? Alright, well that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means, tune in for the next one. See you, Space Cowboy.